So, thinking about a career change, something maybe in healthcare,
Mm.
dispensing medication, offering advice, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I've been thinking about it.
Well, get this. We're doing a deep dive into a RoleCatcher career guide, and it seems like it's practically made for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's got all the insider info on what the job really involves.
That's awesome. It's kind of crazy how often this career gets like simplified in people's minds.
Totally.
There's so much more to it than just handing out pills. This role catcher guide really gets into those little details most people don't even think about.
Right. And it's not just some surface level overview either. They break it down by seniority level. They even have example profiles. Have you ever seen that before? I was blown away.
Wow, that's really cool. It's actually incredibly helpful, those kinds of things. You could really get a sense of the career trajectory. Like, you could start by dispensing under supervision, but then work your way up to independent practice. You could even end up managing a department, maybe even influencing strategy at some point.
Okay, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up a sec. This guide uses this term, medical goods specialized seller.
Uh-huh.
Is that just a pharmacist? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, essentially. The guide kind of uses both terms, pharmacist, medical goods, specialized seller, kind of interchangeably. But there is a subtle difference. And I think it's actually super important for you to get this as you explore this career path.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What's the difference?
Well, I mean, pharmacists are highly qualified healthcare professionals, right?
Right.
But this guide seems to really focus on the customer-facing side of the role, the like salesy parts of it, which is where that whole specialized seller thing comes in.
So you're not just filling prescriptions, you're also advising customers on different products, maybe even doing some upselling.
Exactly. And that means you need a different skill set, things you might not expect. The guide talks a lot about active listening, critical thinking, even customer service skills. It even gets into stuff like understanding product characteristics and sales techniques.
See, I was going to say, it's almost like a mix of healthcare and retail, which is super interesting. No wonder they emphasize those interview questions about staying current on industry trends. You'd need to know about new medications, A&D, new sales strategies, right?
Exactly. And let's not forget about the technology angle. Remember those example profiles? Well, the one for like the mid-level position mentions something about evaluating and implementing new technologies, which could be anything from, automated dispensing systems to really complex patient management software. It's true, technology really is changing so fast these days.
And speaking of things that are constantly evolving, this guide also mentions how important continuous learning is in this career.
Yeah, it's not one of those learn it once and you're set kind of deals.
Right.
Conferences, certifications, all that. Seems like you really got to stay on top of your game. But honestly, that's something I find kind of appealing. You're not just stuck doing the same thing day in and day out. There's always something new to learn, which keeps things interesting. I totally agree. And it can be really engaging to always be learning. And it's not just about like staying ahead of the curve either. It's about being able to provide the best possible care to your patients. When you think about it, you could be the person helping them figure out how to deal with new medications or understand a really complicated treatment plan. You could even just be helping them feel more confident about managing their own health. That's pretty huge.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about the more rewarding parts of this job. But let's be real for a sec. This guide doesn't shy away from the challenges, does it?
Not at all. It's actually really refreshing how upfront they are about the potential downsides. Because honestly, no job is perfect, right? But knowing what you're getting into, the good A&D, the bad, is so important when you're making a big career decision like this.
Absolutely. So what are some of the challenges the guide highlights? What should someone be prepared for if they're seriously thinking about this as a career?
Well, for one thing, it talks about the work environment itself, long hours,
Yeah.
being on your feet a lot, a really fast-paced setting where you have to be incredibly accurate. And then there's dealing with the public, which can be, well,
Yeah, a mixed bag is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
Did the guide get into specifics about that at all? Like what kinds of customer interactions you might have to deal with?
Oh, yeah. It talks about how important it is to handle customer objections and challenges really well. Remember how we talked about those interview questions about adapting your sales approach? That's because you have to be ready for those situations where customers might be unsure about something, or maybe they have the wrong information, or honestly, sometimes they're just difficult.
So like, give me an example. What kind of scenarios are we talking about here?
Well, imagine a customer comes in and they're dead set on getting a specific medication, but there are safer options or ones that would work better for them, or maybe they read something online about a new prescription and now they're hesitant to take it. You need to know how to address those concerns, and you need to do it in a way that's both empathetic, A&D, backed up by actual evidence.
That's a really good point. It's not just about knowing your stuff. You have to be able to explain it in a way that makes the customer feel heard and helps them feel confident about making decisions about their health. And let's be real, that's not always easy.
Totally. You have to find that sweet spot between being confident in what you know and respecting where they're coming from.
It sounds like you have to be part therapist, part salesperson, part walking medical encyclopedia, all at the same time.
Pretty much. But those people skills, that ability to really connect with people, that's what can really make you stand out in this job.
For sure. So someone who's maybe a little more introverted or not really used to dealing with people all day, they might want to think about that aspect carefully. It's not just about the technical side of giving out medication. It's about those human interactions that are so important in healthcare.
That's true. But the guide actually mentions that even if you're not naturally super outgoing, you can still be really good at this. It emphasizes active listening, which is something you can definitely learn and improve over time. Sometimes just really listening to someone and letting them know you understand their concerns can make a huge difference in building that relationship.
That's so true. Sometimes people just need to feel heard, especially when it comes to their health. But even with amazing communication skills, I imagine there are still days when it's rough. Like you've got a million things going on, the phone won't stop ringing, and then you get that one customer who's just having a day.
Oh, I'm sure. It's important to recognize that those tough days are going to happen and have ways to deal with them. But I think it's important to remember, too, that those really hard interactions are probably not going to be the norm. Most people are just coming to you because they need help or advice, and those are the times when you can really have a positive impact.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in the potential negatives. But you're right, it's important to remember how much of a difference you can make in people's lives by doing this.
Exactly. And the guide really emphasizes that feeling of actually making a difference. You're not just putting pills in a bottle. You're playing a huge part in their overall health and well-being.
Absolutely. You're helping people manage chronic conditions, recover from being sick, even just live healthier lives in general. That's got to be pretty amazing.
I can only imagine. And the guide also talks about the intellectual stimulation of this career, which I think is important not to overlook. You're always learning new things, new medications, new treatments, new technologies. It's definitely a field that keeps you on your toes mentally.
So not just emotionally rewarding, but mentally stimulating too. Always growing your knowledge base. Pretty cool. Okay, let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, this sounds awesome. Sign me up. What advice would you give them based on what we've learned from this RoleCatcher guide?
I mean, it's great to be excited about it, but it's also important to go into it knowing what to expect. So I'd say the most important thing is to do your research. This guide is a great starting point, but it's just the beginning. Talk to people who are actually doing the job every day, maybe even try to shadow a pharmacist if you can. You could even volunteer at a local clinic or hospital to get a feel for what it's really like.
It really is about so much more than just like counting pills and stuff. It's about really connecting with people, figuring out how to deal with those tough situations, and being okay with the fact that it's a field that's always changing.
Yeah, totally. But I think those are the things that make it rewarding.
Yeah.
You're not just going through the motions. You're actually making a real difference in people's lives. And when you have those moments where you connect with someone, where you actually help them through something with their health, I mean, that's got to feel pretty great.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the good, the bad, and everything in between. But there's one more thing from this RoleCatcher guide I want to mention before we finish up the whole technology piece.
Oh, right. We talked about it a little bit before, but yeah, it's worth digging into a little more. The guide really stresses how much technology is changing the game when it comes to dispensing medication and advising patients. Honestly, I think it's one of the most interesting things about this field moving forward.
Right. I mean, we're talking about a career that's literally evolving right in front of us. And this guide doesn't beat around the bush to you as make me easy to be comfortable with technology to really succeed in this environment.
No kidding. Even entry-level positions now, you need to be more tech-savvy than you did just a few years ago. Electronic health records, pharmacy software, all those automated systems we talked about, those are just the basic tools now.
And the guide even says that as you move up in your career, you'll probably be involved in deciding which new technologies to use and even putting them into place. That's got to be exciting. But also maybe a little intimidating if you're not exactly a tech whiz.
I get that, for sure. But there's something really important the guide points out. Learning and growing professionally is just part of this job. It's not like they expect you to know everything right away, but you do have to be open to learning new things all the time and getting used to new systems and ways of doing things.
So what you're saying is I can't just use my trusty abacus forever.
Probably not. But seriously, being willing to try new technology and roll with the changes, that's such a valuable skill. And not just in healthcare, in any field.
So true. Okay, so someone's listening to this and they're thinking, this all sounds amazing, but how do I actually get started? What's the one most important piece of advice you'd give them based on everything in this role catcher guide?
You know, if I had to pick just one, I'd say, go into it with the sense of curiosity. Really be curious. Talk to people who are doing this work. Ask them all your questions.
Hmm.
See if you can shadow a pharmacist or volunteer somewhere, a clinic, a hospital, whatever. Just really immerse yourself in that healthcare world and see if it feels right to you.
That's great advice. It's all about figuring out what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and finding that place where the two meet. And honestly, it seems like this career path offers a really cool blend of both.
I totally agree. It's tough, no doubt about it, but it also has so much potential for growth, for making a real impact, and for feeling really good about the work you do.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you, our amazing listener, with one last thought.
I'm all ears.
This role catcher guide gave us a really awesome look at what this career is like right now. But things are changing so fast in the healthcare world. So here's something for you to think about, something I'd encourage you to explore more on your own. What do you think this job will look like in the future?
Wow, okay. Big question.
Right. I mean, with telehealth becoming so big and all these digital health platforms popping up, will we have virtual pharmacists doing consultations online? Will AI be dispensing medication or giving personalized advice? Honestly, I'm excited to see what happens, but also a little terrified.
I think that's a good way to be. Who knows? Maybe that'll be our next deep dive.
You read my mind. But until then, thanks for coming on this journey with us. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better prepared you'll be no matter what career path you choose. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.